At 37 years old, Bishop Prescott had a net worth of $22 million dollars and a life that was, by all external measures, profoundly simple. He owned a 2015 Ford F-150 with 112,000 miles on it, a collection of worn-in flannel shirts, and a quiet satisfaction in the work of his own two hands. His days were spent in the sprawling workshop behind his Wauwatosa home, restoring antique furniture with a surgeon's precision. The scent of sawdust and linseed oil was more familiar to him than the sterile perfume of a boardroom. And on this particular Saturday evening at 6:15 p.m., he stood in the foyer of their $450,000 colonial, the sharp lines of his $1,100 Xenia suit feeling like a costume. The knot in his stomach had nothing to do with the unaccustomed formality. It was a cold, hard stone, deposited there just moments before by his wife. Delphine emerged from their master bedroom, a vision of corporate ambition wrapped in a $4,500 midnight blue Roland Mouret gown. Her hair, a cascade of elegant twists, was styled to perfection, and the diamond earrings he'd bought her for their anniversary, a staggering $12,000 from Tiffany & Co., glittered at her ears. She looked powerful. She looked successful. She looked at that moment like a complete stranger. She surveyed him, her eyes doing a quick, critical scan. "The suit is fine," she conceded. The same way one might approve a caterer's choice of napkin color. She adjusted the knot of his tie, her touch clinical. Then she took a small step back, creating a space between them that felt more like a chasm. "Okay, Bishop. A few ground rules for tonight." He waited. He was good at waiting. It was, in fact, the foundation of his fortune. "This gala is huge for me," she began, her voice low and urgent. "Marcus Thorne, the CEO, will be there, the entire executive board. This is my chance to really solidify my position for the senior VP opening." She was currently a vice president of strategic sourcing at Rockwell Automation, a position that earned her a handsome $185,000 a year, plus bonuses, a position she spoke of as if it were a holy calling. "I'm proud of you, Del," he said, his voice a low, warm rumble. "You'll be great." "Yes, well, that's the point," she said, waving away his support as if it were a gnat. "It's all about perception, optics. It's corporate." She took a breath, and the words that came next were the ones that settled in his gut like ice. "So tonight, at the gala, please, don't mention you're my husband." The room went silent, save for the ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the hall, a piece he had spent 3 months lovingly restoring. The tick-tock sounded like a countdown. "I'm sorry," Bishop said, certain he had misheard. Delphine sighed, a gust of pure impatience. "Don't introduce yourself as my husband. Don't hover. In fact, it's better if we're not seen arriving together. I'll take the BMW. You can take your truck and meet me there." Her car was a leased 2023 BMW X5, a $1,800 a month expense he covered. "Just be a guest, a friend, an acquaintance. For corporate reasons, you understand. It looks better if I'm seen as fully independent, not as someone's wife." He looked at this woman, his wife of 5 years. He saw the flicker of something in her eyes. Not guilt, but a steely, unapologetic resolve. She was asking him to erase himself, to become a non-entity, a ghost at the feast, all for the sake of her ambition. The devastating request hung in the air, sucking all the oxygen from the room. He had no idea then just how wrong he was about the true nature of the evening. He had no idea that her small, cruel request was the first tremor of a seismic event that would shatter their world. He simply nodded, the movement stiff, unnatural. The man who owned a controlling interest in the very company she was desperate to impress felt the cold reality of his marriage settle over him like a shroud. Their life in the quiet, tree-lined suburb of Wauwatosa had been built on a foundation of such contradictions. The facade was one of domestic normalcy, but the ledger told a different story. The $450,000 house had been her choice, a step up from the charming but smaller Bayview bungalow he had owned before they married. "We need space to entertain, B," she had insisted. "It's an investment in my career." He had paid the down payment, $90,000, from a savings account, and his name was the only one on the mortgage, a detail she'd brushed aside as a mere formality to speed up the paperwork. Their days had a rhythm. He would be up at 5 a.m., the sky still a bruised purple over Milwaukee. He'd make coffee, an expensive single-origin bean she liked, purchased in a $45 bag from a local roaster, and pack her a lunch, a salad with grilled chicken, the dressing in a separate container, exactly as she liked it. It was an act of service, a quiet "I love you," translated into Tupperware and insulated lunch bags. He'd leave it on the polished granite countertop of their $60,000 kitchen, a space he rarely used for his own simple meals of eggs and toast, while she was conquering the corporate world at Rockwell's headquarters in the Menomonee Valley, a sprawling campus of glass and steel. Bishop was in his sanctuary. The workshop was a converted 3-car garage he'd insulated and wired himself, a $15,000 project. Inside, the walls were lined with tools that hummed with potential: a $3,000 saw-stop table saw, a vintage Delta lathe he'd restored, and rows of hand planes that gleamed like jewels. This was where he was most himself, covered in a fine layer of sawdust, his deep brown skin luminous in the shafts of light from the high windows. His hands, which could coax a flawless finish from a raw piece of maple, were the source of his peace. Delphine didn't understand it. She called it his hobby. "Are you still out there playing with your little wood projects?" she'd ask, her voice filtering through his phone's speaker as she drove home. It was a joke, but it had barbs. One evening about a year prior, he had proudly shown her a completed rocking chair, crafted from black walnut, its curves so elegant it looked as if it had grown that way. "What do you think?" he'd asked, his voice full of the quiet pride of a creator. She'd circled it, running a manicured finger over the armrest. "It's nice, honey. Very rustic. How much could you sell that for? A few $100s?" "I wasn't planning on selling it," he'd said, the pride deflating. "I was thinking of it for our future. For a nursery, maybe." Delphine had laughed, a short, sharp sound that wasn't kind. "A nursery? Bishop, my career is just taking off. I don't have time for a baby. Besides, we need to focus on things that generate real returns, not crafts." She gestured around the workshop. "All this stuff, it's an expense, not an asset." He didn't bother telling her the tools alone were worth more than her BMW. He didn't bother telling her that the rocking chair was, to him, priceless. He just wheeled it into a corner and covered it with a canvas drop cloth. It sat there still, a monument to a conversation he couldn't forget. The chasm between them was financial, but it was also philosophical. When her parents came to visit, he'd spent 2 days smoking a brisket on his $2,000 Traeger grill, making his mama's famous potato salad, and ensuring their stay was comfortable. Delphine's father, a retired accountant, had cornered him by the grill. "So, Bishop," he'd said, looking him up and down, "Delphine is doing so well over at Rockwell. Big things ahead for her. What is it you do again? Carpentry?" "Something like that," Bishop had replied, checking the temperature of the meat. Later, Delphine had pulled him aside in the kitchen. "Couldn't you have just told him you're a furniture restorer? Something like that makes you sound unemployed." The brisket had been perfect, but the words left a bitter taste in his mouth. He had paid for their plane tickets, $850 from Atlanta, the groceries, $400 at the local Sendix, and the expensive bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, $150. They drank with dinner, but all she cared about was the title he refused to claim. He was simply Bishop. That wasn't enough for her. It had to have a title, a price tag, a ranking. He played dumb for the sake of peace. He rationalized her ambition as drive, her dismissiveness as stress. He was the stable, supportive husband. He absorbed the little cuts, the 1,000 paper-thin slights, telling himself it was the price of admission for a quiet life, for the love he thought they shared. When she said she needed a new work wardrobe to compete with the other VPs, he transferred $20,000 to her account without a second thought. He saw the purchases arrive: a $2,400 Burberry trench coat, an $8,700 Armani suit, shoes that cost more than his first car. He saw her preen in the mirror and told himself her confidence was his reward. He was a man who understood long-term investments, and he believed he was investing in their shared future. He had no idea he was merely funding his own obsolescence. The accumulation of outrage was a slow, creeping tide that he had willfully ignored. It wasn't one grand betrayal, but a series of escalating cruelties, each one chipping away at the man he was, and the husband she wanted him to be. The scenes played out in his memory like a portfolio of painful evidence. There was the dinner party, 6 months ago, at the home of her then-boss, a senior vice president named Gerald Vance. They lived in a sprawling, modern mansion in Mequon that probably cost upwards of $2 million. Delphine had been a bundle of nerves all day. "Everyone will be there, Bishop. Please, just try to fit in. Talk about, I don't know, golf or the stock market." "I don't play golf," he'd said simply. "Then pretend," she'd snapped. At the party, surrounded by men in expensive suits who talked about their portfolios and their vacation homes in Vail, Bishop felt like an anthropologist studying a foreign tribe. Delphine, meanwhile, was in her element. She laughed at jokes that weren't funny, her voice an octave higher than usual. When Gerald finally ambled over, a glass of what was probably 500 a bottle scotch in his hand, he clapped Bishop on the shoulder. "Delphine, you didn't tell me you were bringing such a handsome fella? What do you do, big guy?" Gerald asked, his tone jovial but laced with the condescension of a man used to being the most important person in any room. Before Bishop could answer, Delphine jumped in, her laugh light and tinkling. "Oh, Bishop is an artist. He works with his hands. Very earthy." She said the word earthy as if it meant unwashed. "An artist! Wonderful!" Gerald boomed. "My wife buys art. Maybe we can get you a commission to build us a new woodshed." The men around him chuckled. Bishop felt the heat rise in his neck. He looked at Delphine, expecting to see a flicker of defense, of loyalty. Instead, he saw her smiling brightly at Gerald, basking in his attention. She had thrown him to the wolves to get a pat on the head. Later that night, in the car on the way home, the silence was thick. "That was humiliating, Delphine," he finally said, his voice quiet. "Oh, don't be so sensitive," she'd replied, staring out of the window. "That's just how the game is played. Gerald loved me. He thinks I'm a team player. That's what matters." What he didn't say was, "What about our team?" Then there was the matter of his family. His auntie, a formidable woman who had helped raise him after his mother passed, lived in a small, neat house in the Bronzeville neighborhood. She was the heart of his family, a repository of wisdom and unconditional love. Every third Sunday, she held a sprawling family dinner. It was a command performance, and Bishop never missed it. In the early years of their marriage, Delphine had attended, though she always seemed uncomfortable, picking at the macaroni and cheese and checking her phone under the table. About 2 years ago, she stopped coming altogether. "I just can't, Bishop," she'd said the first time she begged off. "I have a huge presentation to prep for Monday. My career has to come first right now." The excuses became more and more flimsy. I have a headache. I need to catch up on emails. I think I'm coming down with something. The final straw came on the Sunday before his auntie's 70th birthday. He had been planning to bring Delphine. His aunt adored her despite everything. "I can't go," Delphine said, not even looking up from her laptop at the kitchen island. She was wearing a $300 silk pajama set. "I have a spin class and then brunch with the girls from marketing." "It's her 70th birthday, Delphine," Bishop said, his voice dangerously low. "My whole family will be there. And I'm sure they'll have a wonderful time," she said with a breezy finality. "Just tell Auntie I love her and that a gift is on its way." The gift, he later found out, was a generic $100 gift card to a department store, ordered on Amazon and delivered in a sterile cardboard box. He had spent his afternoon at her party, deflecting questions about his wife's absence, his heart a leaden weight in his chest. He felt the profound loneliness of being married, but standing alone. The cruelty wasn't just in her actions, it was in her words, the casual way she devalued his entire existence. He had inherited his father's legacy, not just the money, but the philosophy behind it. His father, a brilliant but unassuming electrical engineer, had been one of the early investors in a small tech company that eventually became a global giant. He had lived modestly, driven the same Buick for 15 years, and taught Bishop that wealth was a tool, not a trophy. "It gives you freedom, son," he'd said, "the freedom to live a life of purpose, not a life of performance." When his father passed, Bishop at 29 had found himself the sole beneficiary of a trust, valued in the tens of millions. He'd been working as a history teacher at a local high school, making $48,000 a year, and he was happy. The money changed everything and nothing. He quit his job not because he looked down on it, but because he realized he didn't need to work for a paycheck anymore. He could work for passion. He found that passion in the grain of wood, in the history of a piece of furniture, in the creation of something beautiful and lasting. He had tried to explain this to Delphine once. They were sitting on the patio of their Wauwatosa home, the one he paid for. It was a rare, warm September evening. "I just don't get why you don't do something with it," she said, swirling a glass of $80 a bottle wine he'd bought. "We could be living in a penthouse downtown. We could be traveling the world, first class. You could be on boards, a philanthropist. You have $22 million, Bishop, and you live like you make $22,000 a year." "I'm happy," he had said. "I have a life of purpose." She had looked at him then, her expression a mixture of pity and contempt that broke his heart. "Your father's money gave you freedom. You're right," she said, her voice soft but venomous. "The freedom to do nothing at all." That was the deepest cut. She didn't just misunderstand his life, she held it in contempt. She saw his peace as laziness, his contentment as a lack of ambition. And all the while she was spending the money, living the life his father's quiet genius had afforded her, and despising the son who embodied that same quiet ethos. The tide of outrage was rising, and tonight at the Gala, it was about to reach the shore. The drive to the Miller High Life Theater was a 20-minute journey through the heart of Milwaukee, but it felt like a voyage across an ocean of silence. Delphine had left first, as planned, the throaty roar of her BMW X5's engine, a statement of her impatience. Bishop followed 10 minutes later in his Ford F-150. The cab of the truck, which usually felt like a sanctuary, smelled faintly of sawdust and honesty, a stark contrast to the sterile, leather-scented world he was about to enter. He parked in a public garage 3 blocks away, the $20 parking fee a minor annoyance. As he walked toward the theater, the crisp November air bit at his cheeks. He felt a profound sense of detachment, as if he were watching a movie of his own life. He arrived at 7:03 p.m. The theater, a historic gem on West Wisconsin Avenue, was ablaze with light. A red carpet, cordoned off with velvet ropes, led into the grand foyer. A large banner proclaimed Rockwell Automation, innovating the future Gala. He saw Delphine near the entrance, laughing with a group of people, her midnight blue dress a slash of color against the sea of black tuxedos. She saw him approach, and for a fleeting second, a flicker of annoyance crossed her face before being replaced by a practiced neutral smile. She didn't move toward him. She didn't acknowledge him beyond a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. The message was clear. You are on your own. So he played his part. He was a ghost, a specter. He collected a name tag that simply read Bishop Prescott, with no company affiliation. He bypassed the champagne flutes and got a glass of still water from the bar. He found a discreet spot in an alcove near a marble column, a perfect vantage point from which to observe the proceedings. He was playing dumb, not just for her, but for himself. He was gathering evidence, though he didn't know it yet. He was watching the woman he married operate in her natural habitat. She was magnificent, in a terrifying way. She moved through the crowd with the predatory grace of a shark. Every handshake was a calculation, every laugh a strategic deployment. He watched her corner a bearish man he recognized from her company newsletters as the head of European operations. She touched the man's arm, her head tilted, her expression one of rapt attention. Bishop knew she found the man boorish and dull. She'd complained about him for weeks, but here, she was his biggest fan. An hour bled into another. He saw her introduce people to each other, making connections, building her web. A few times, people she was talking to would glance his way, a question in their eyes. He saw her dismiss him with a flick of her wrist, a subtle shake of her head. Oh, him? Just a friend? He could practically hear her say. He felt a strange, cold calm descend over him. The pain was still there, a dull ache beneath his ribs, but it was being overlaid by a crystalline clarity. He was seeing his wife, his marriage, for exactly what it was. At 8:45 p.m., a colleague of Delphine's, a younger woman named Chloe from her team, spotted him. Chloe was new, earnest, and hadn't yet learned the corporate game of thrones. "Bishop, hi," she said, her smile genuine. "I didn't know you were coming. Where's Delphine? She was so stressed about this speech Marcus is giving." "She's networking," Bishop said, his voice even. "She's a pro." "She's the best," Chloe agreed enthusiastically. "We all want to be her when we grow up. She's going to be CEO one day, I swear." Chloe looked at him, a little confused. "It's funny. She never talks about you at the office. I didn't even know she was married until I saw your Christmas card photo on her desk." The words were innocent, but they landed like a punch. "She never talks about you." He was a secret, an inconvenient truth hidden away like a spare tire. The Christmas card photo, which he had insisted on, was the only evidence of his existence in her professional world. He simply smiled at Chloe. She likes to keep her work life and her home life separate. It was a lie, and it tasted like ash in his mouth. He was lying to protect his wife's carefully constructed image, an image that was built on his own erasure. The act of playing dumb, of pretending everything was normal, was becoming an almost unbearable strain. He was a silent partner in his own humiliation, but the night was not over. The main event he was about to learn had not even begun. The discovery came at precisely 9:17 p.m. The chandeliers in the Miller High Life Theater's grand ballroom dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd of 500 executives, engineers, and partners. A spotlight found the stage, illuminating a single podium. Marcus Thorne, the chairman and CEO of Rockwell Automation, walked into the light. He was a tall, elegant black man in his late 50s with a salt and pepper beard and an aura of calm authority that commanded the room without a single word. Bishop watched from his alcove. He could see Delphine near the front, positioned perfectly, her face a mask of rapt attention. She looked like a disciple at the feet of a prophet. Marcus began with the usual pleasantries, thanking the teams, celebrating the year's successes, a 12% increase in revenue, a new $300 million contract with an electric vehicle manufacturer. He spoke for 10 minutes, his voice a smooth, confident baritone. Bishop felt a familiar respect for the man. Marcus had taken over as CEO 3 years ago and had steered the company with a steady hand and a clear vision, focusing on sustainable technology and employee well-being. He was, in short, a good leader. He was also the man who managed Bishop's largest investment. "But I'm not here tonight to just talk about numbers on a spreadsheet," Marcus said, his tone shifting. "I'm here to talk about the heart of this company, the soul of it. And the soul of Rockwell isn't in our machines or our algorithms. It's in our people. It's in our values." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Great companies are not built by executives in boardrooms. They are guided by a vision. For the past few years, our vision has been sharpened, our purpose clarified, by a partner who prefers to remain in the background, a man who believes in what we do, not for the quarterly returns, but for the long-term impact we can have on the world. Bishop felt a cold dread mix with a strange sense of inevitability. He knew where this was going. He had spoken to Marcus 2 weeks ago, and Marcus had mentioned wanting to thank him publicly. Bishop had politely declined. "I'm not the story, Marcus," he'd said. "The work is the story." Apparently, Marcus had a different idea. "This man is not just an investor," Marcus continued, his eyes scanning the crowd. "He is a steward. He inherited a great fortune, and instead of spending it on yachts and private jets, he has reinvested it, quietly, thoughtfully, into companies that build, that create, that innovate, companies like ours." Out of the corner of his eye, Bishop saw Delphine lean forward, intrigued. She was probably wondering which billionaire Marcus was talking about. "He doesn't like the spotlight," Marcus said with a warm smile. "In fact, he specifically asked me not to do this. But leadership is sometimes about recognizing contributions that are too humble to recognize themselves. He is our silent partner, our North Star. He is, in fact, our majority shareholder, and technically, he's my boss." The room erupted in a wave of murmurs. Who was it? Necks craned. Phones, which had been put away, were subtly pulled out. "He's here tonight," Marcus said, his smile widening. "He probably thinks he's hiding in a corner, hoping I won't spot him." Marcus's eyes found Bishop's alcove. The spotlight operator, getting a cue from a stage manager, swung the beam, and suddenly Bishop was bathed in a brilliant white light. The world seemed to slow down. 500 faces turned to stare at him. The man in the simple Xenia suit, holding a glass of water. The man who arrived in a Ford F-150. The artist. The earthy friend. And then Bishop's gaze found Delphine. It was a moment frozen in time. Her face, which had been arranged in a look of ambitious curiosity, shattered. The color drained away, leaving her deep brown skin looking ashen under the stage lights. Her mouth opened slightly, a perfect O of disbelief. Her eyes, wide with a horror that was primal and absolute, were locked on his. In them, he saw it all. The frantic calculations, the dawning comprehension, the immediate and catastrophic implosion of her entire world. The man she had told to hide in the shadows, the husband she was ashamed of, the nothing she had dismissed, was the king of the very kingdom she was trying to conquer. The discovery was not just his, it was hers, and it was happening in the most public, most brutal way imaginable. The silence from her was more damning than any scream. The spotlight was a hot, unblinking eye. The silence in the ballroom stretched for a heartbeat, then two, before it was broken by a smattering of confused applause that quickly grew into a roar. Marcus Thorne was beaming from the stage, his arm extended toward Bishop. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in finally, properly, welcoming the man whose vision and support make our work possible, the owner of Prescott Holdings, and our majority shareholder, Mr. Bishop Prescott. Every instinct in Bishop's body screamed at him to shrink back into the shadows, to disappear. But the man who had spent 5 years making himself smaller to fit into his wife's world was gone. In his place was Bishop Prescott, son of a quiet genius, steward of a legacy. He straightened his shoulders, set his jaw, and began to walk toward the stage. The journey from the alcove was the longest 100 feet of his life. He didn't look at the astonished faces of the executives who had ignored him all night. He didn't look at Gerald Vance, whose jaw was hanging open. He didn't even look at Chloe, who looked like she might faint. He kept his eyes locked on one person, Delphine. She was frozen in place, a statue of ruin. Her carefully constructed world had been demolished in a single sentence. The man she had just spent 3 hours positioning as a nobody was the ultimate somebody. The shame she had tried to push onto him had recoiled back on her with the force of a battering ram. Her face was a canvas of pure, unadulterated panic. As he passed her table, their eyes met for a fraction of a second. In that moment, he felt nothing. Not pity, not anger, not even satisfaction. Just a vast, empty space where his love for her used to be. He ascended the small set of stairs to the stage and shook Marcus's offered hand. The grip was firm, the respect in Marcus's eyes genuine. "I told you I was going to do it one day," Marcus murmured, just for him. "You did," Bishop replied, his voice steady. Marcus gestured to the podium. "The floor is yours." Bishop stepped up to the microphone. The room was absolutely silent. He looked out at the sea of faces, the people whose salaries, bonuses, and careers were, in a very real way, dependent on his faith in them. He thought of the 3-minute speech he had imagined giving if this day ever came. He had planned to talk about Q4 earnings projections and supply chain innovations. He threw it all away. "Thank you, Marcus," he began, his voice calm and clear, amplified by the theater's state-of-the-art sound system. "I'm not much for speeches." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the audience. "My father taught me that the loudest person in the room is usually the least powerful. He taught me to listen more than I speak, and to measure wealth not by the size of your bank account, but by the integrity of your character and the value of your work." He paused, letting his father's words settle. The value of your work. For the engineers here tonight, that's the elegant solution to a complex problem. For the sales team, it's building a relationship built on trust, not just transactions. For the men and women on the factory floor, it's the pride of assembling something that will power a hospital or a school or a city. He looked directly at Marcus. For a CEO, it's fostering a culture where every single person feels seen, valued, and respected, not for their title or their connections, but for their contribution. The subtext was a cannon blast. Rockwell isn't just a line item on my portfolio. It's a community. It's a testament to what we can build when we work together with honesty and integrity. I am profoundly proud to be a part of it. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for your dedication. Please, enjoy the rest of your evening." He said nothing more. He didn't need to. He gave a simple nod to the audience and another to Marcus. He then turned and walked off the stage, not back to the alcove, but toward the main exit. As he descended the stairs, the applause was deafening. It was a standing ovation. He walked past Delphine's table again. She was still standing, her hands clenched at her sides. Her face was white. He did not slow his pace. He did not look at her. He simply walked out of the ballroom, through the grand foyer, and out into the cold Milwaukee night. The frigid air was a welcome shock. He took a deep breath, the first clean one he'd had all night. He walked the 3 blocks to the parking garage, the sound of his hard-soled dress shoes echoing in the quiet streets. He got into his truck, the familiar scent of sawdust a comforting balm. He sat for a moment in the darkness, the engine off. The strike had been delivered, not with a shout, but with a quiet, devastating truth. He pulled out his $200 iPhone, a device he rarely used for much beyond calls. He opened his text messages and found the number for Anya Sharma, his attorney. He typed a single, clear message. Anya, it's time. We're moving forward. My office, Sunday at 10 a.m. to sign the papers. He hit send at 9:28 p.m. He started the truck and drove away, the glittering lights of the Miller High Life Theater shrinking in his rearview mirror. He did not look back. Sunday morning at 9:57 a.m., Bishop sat in the leather and chrome visitor's chair opposite Anya Sharma's desk. Her office, on the 30th floor of the U.S. Bank Center, offered a panoramic view of Lake Michigan, a vast expanse of gray water under a gray November sky. The space was minimalist and immaculate, much like the woman herself. Anya was in her 40s, sharp, with her hair pulled back in a severe bun, and wearing a simple but clearly expensive black dress. She billed at $200 per hour, and she was worth every penny. On the polished mahogany desk between them, a series of documents were arranged in a neat fan. "Good morning, Bishop," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. It was one of the things he valued most about her. "I received your text. I've pulled the files." He nodded, taking a sip of the black coffee her assistant had brought him. He hadn't slept at the Wauwatosa house. He'd driven to the Pfister Hotel, paid $450 for a suite, and spent the night staring at the ceiling. A sense of grim resolve solidifying within him. Delphine had called 37 times. He hadn't answered. Anya tapped the first document with a perfectly manicured finger. "This is the premarital agreement you both signed on May 4th, 2018. It's ironclad. It explicitly states that all assets owned by either party prior to the marriage remain the sole and separate property of that party." She slid another folder forward. "This is the documentation for the Prescott Holdings Separate Property Trust, which we established on January 10th, 2019. It's the legal entity that holds your entire Rockwell automation portfolio, as well as your other investments. Your total assets under this trust are valued, as of Friday's closing, at $22,453,000. She looked up at him. "Delphine is not a beneficiary. She has no legal claim to any part of it. Not a single share, not a single dollar." "Good," Bishop said. The word was a stone in the quiet room. "Now for the marital property," Anya continued, pulling a third file. "This is more complex, but only slightly. The primary marital asset is the home on Glenview Avenue in Wauwatosa." She consulted her notes. "You made the entire down payment of $90,000 from your premarital savings. The mortgage, in the amount of $360,000, is solely in your name. However, since it was the shared marital home, she will have a claim to a portion of the equity accrued during the marriage." "How much?" Bishop asked. "The home's current appraised value is approximately $450,000. The remaining mortgage is $310,000. That leaves $140,000 in equity. Wisconsin is a community property state, so her presumptive share would be 50% or $70,000. Anya paused. However, given the circumstances, the short duration of the marriage, your sole financial contribution to the property's acquisition and upkeep, and her own substantial income, we can argue for an unequal division. I expect we could negotiate her share down to $40,000, maybe even $30,000. Bishop considered this. He thought of the house, the garden he had planted, the workshop he had built. He also thought of Delphine's frantic, pleading voicemails, the ones he had listened to on speakerphone at 3 a.m., the confusion turning to rage, then to desperate bargaining. "Give her the 70, Bishop said. Anya raised an eyebrow. "That's generous." "I want it to be clean," he said. "I'm not trying to punish her, Anya. I'm trying to disconnect. I want to pay for my freedom. What about her assets?" "Her last disclosed salary was $185,000. She has a 401k through Rockwell with a current balance of approximately $210,000. She has a brokerage account with about $45,000 in it. These are her separate property. We won't touch them." "And her car?" "Leased," Anya said with a thin smile. "The lease agreement is co-signed by you through the trust. The monthly payments of $1,100 are auto-debited from an account she cannot access without you. We will terminate the agreement. She will have to return the vehicle." The plan was cold, efficient, and total. This was the strategic planning he was good at. Not the emotional chaos of a failing marriage, but the clear, logical process of dissolution. He was dismantling the life they had built, piece by piece, with the same precision he used to disassemble a piece of antique furniture. "So," Anya summarized, "we file first thing Monday morning. We will petition for exclusive use of the Wauwatosa residence, given that you are the sole owner on the deed and mortgage. We will offer her $70,000 for her share of the equity, contingent on her vacating the property within 30 days. We will sever all financial ties, cancel all joint credit cards, and terminate the vehicle lease. The petition will cite irreconcilable differences. It's clean, quiet, and legally unassailable." Bishop looked out the window at the vast, indifferent lake. He thought of Delphine's face at the Gala, the crumbling facade. He thought of her voice on the voicemails, stripped of its corporate confidence, raw with panic. He felt a pang, not of regret, but of a deep, profound sadness for the woman he once loved and for the man he had pretended to be for her. He turned back to Anya. "Draw up the papers," he said. "I'll sign them now." The consequences cascaded with the swift, brutal efficiency of a corporate restructuring. The fallout for Delphine was not a single event, but a series of public and private humiliations, each one stripping away another layer of the life she had so carefully curated. Monday, 9:15 a.m. A junior paralegal from Anya Sharma's firm, a young man in an ill-fitting suit, walked into the glass-walled executive wing on the 4th floor of Rockwell Automation's headquarters. He approached Delphine's office, where she was on the phone, her voice strained. Her assistant tried to stop him, but he was polite and firm. He waited until Delphine hung up, then stepped inside her office. Through the glass, her entire team watched as he placed a thick manila envelope on her $4,000 oak desk. They saw her face go from confused to horrified as she scanned the top page. The paralegal said a few quiet words, got a signature on a receipt, and walked away. The entire interaction took less than 90 seconds. The public serving of the divorce papers was the first blow. Her authority, which depended on an aura of untouchable success, was instantly and irrevocably compromised. Monday, 11 a.m. An email from Marcus Thorne's executive assistant appeared in her inbox. The subject line was simple: meeting. She was summoned to the CEO's office on the top floor. When she entered, Marcus was standing by the window, looking out over the Menomonee Valley. He didn't ask her to sit. He was not angry. He was worse. He was disappointed. "Delphine," he began, his voice heavy, "I have a copy of a legal filing that names both you and Bishop Prescott. I also have a company to run. A company whose culture is built on integrity and respect." He turned to face her. "Your position here is no longer tenable. Your ability to lead has been undermined, not by Bishop, but by your own choices." "Marcus, I can explain," she started, her voice cracking. "There is nothing to explain," he said, cutting her off gently. "We will offer you a severance package, 6 months' salary, which comes to $92,500, contingent on you signing a non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreement. You'll have until the end of the day to clear out your office. Helen from HR will escort you." It wasn't a negotiation, it was a verdict. She had spent a decade climbing this ladder, and her descent took less than 10 minutes. Tuesday, 3:30 p.m. A flatbed tow truck from the BMW dealership arrived at the Wauwatosa house. Delphine watched from the living room window as the driver methodically winched her gleaming $87,000 X5 onto the truck. An email from Anya Sharma had informed her that the lease, paid for by Bishop, had been terminated. She was now without a job and without a car, stranded in a house that no longer felt like hers. The voicemails. The digital record of her collapse began Saturday night and continued for the next 72 hours. Bishop had listened to them once in the sterile quiet of his hotel room, as a form of final confirmation. Voicemail 1, Saturday, 11:58 p.m. Angry, frantic. "Bishop, pick up the phone. How could you do this to me? You humiliated me. You sat there and let me look like a fool. This is my career, my life. You just blew up. You owe me an explanation. Call me back, now." Voicemail 2, Sunday, 8:12 a.m. Bargaining, pleading. "Okay, honey, look, I'm sorry. I was wrong. The gala, it was a mistake. I was stressed about the promotion. I wasn't thinking. But we can fix this. We're a team, remember? Bishop? Please, just call me. We can't throw away 5 years over one stupid night. I love you." Voicemail 3, Monday, 9:45 a.m. Pure panic, post-serving. "Oh my God, Bishop, I have the papers. Divorce? Are you insane? You can't be serious. This is a nightmare. You can't do this. We have to talk. Please, I'm begging you. Don't do this to us. Don't do this to me." Voicemail 4, Monday, 5:30 p.m. Defeated, hollow. "They walked me out. Marcus fired me. They took my badge, my career. It's over. Everything is over. I'm at the house you paid for. I don't know what to do. Was this what you wanted? To destroy me? If it was, congratulations, Bishop. You won." The financial severing. By Wednesday, the cascade was a flood. The Joint American Express card, with its $50,000 limit that she used for her designer wardrobe, was declined at a boutique in the 3rd Ward. Her personal credit cards, which she had neglected in favor of Bishop's seemingly endless resources, were nearly maxed out. Her direct deposit from Rockwell, the $7,100 that hit her account every 2 weeks, would not be coming. She was forced to confront the brutal math of her new reality, a severance that would run out, no income, and a lifestyle that cost tens of thousands a month to maintain. The beautiful life she had was a mirage, funded entirely by a man she had considered a liability. The final, quietest consequence was the social one. The friends from work, the women she had brunched with, the executives she had networked with, all went silent. Her calls went to voicemail. Her texts were left on read. Without her title at Rockwell, without her proximity to power, Delphine found she had no social currency at all. She was alone, in a house full of expensive things that brought her no comfort, facing the wreckage of a life she had torched with her own ambition. 2 years passed. The legal proceedings had been as clean and swift as Anya Sharma had promised. Delphine had taken the $70,000 settlement, signed the papers, and moved out of the Wauwatosa house. Bishop had heard through the grapevine that she had moved to Chicago, taken a lesser role at a smaller logistics firm, and was living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park that cost $2,800 a month. He felt no satisfaction in this knowledge, only a distant, quiet finality. He had sold the Wauwatosa house and all its ghosts for $465,000 and moved back to his roots. He bought a modest but beautiful brick duplex in Bayview for $375,000, just a few blocks from the lake. He lived in the lower unit and kept the upper unit empty, using it as a design studio and office. He poured his energy not just into restoring furniture, but into building a new life, one of authentic purpose. The first thing he did was contact the dean of the College of Engineering at Marquette University. He sat in the dean's office, a man in a simple $89 Timex watch and a comfortable sweater, and made his proposal. He established the Prescott Engineering Forward Scholarship, an endowment of $2 million. The fund was designed to provide full-ride scholarships for 4 promising students from the Milwaukee public school system each year, with a focus on young black men and women who, like his father, had a gift for engineering, but not the resources. He took a personal role, mentoring the students, helping them navigate the challenges of a demanding curriculum. He found more satisfaction in seeing their graduation photos than he ever had in seeing his investment portfolio grow. His days found a new, peaceful rhythm. Mornings were for walks in Lake Park, watching the sun rise over the vast blue expanse of Lake Michigan. The light glinted off the water, a daily promise of a fresh start. He'd watch the couples walking their dogs, the families with children laughing on the swings. There was no longing, no bitterness. He felt a quiet contentment, a sense of being exactly where he was supposed to be. Afternoons were for his work. His company, which he simply called Prescott Woodworks, was thriving. He never advertised, but his reputation for flawless craftsmanship spread through word of mouth. He had a 2-year waiting list for commissions, building custom furniture for clients who appreciated the art, not just the price tag. His workshop, in a rented space in a nearby industrial building, was his cathedral. One crisp autumn afternoon, as he was putting the final coat of oil on a handcrafted cherry wood dining table, his phone buzzed. It was a number he didn't recognize. He ignored it, but a voicemail popped up a moment later. Curiosity got the better of him. He pressed play. "Bishop, it's Delphine." Her voice was different, quieter. The hard, ambitious edge was gone, replaced by something softer, more hesitant. "I know it's been a long time. I'm in town visiting my parents. I heard about the scholarship program at Marquette. What you're doing, it's incredible. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For not seeing you. For not seeing the good, kind, brilliant man you were. I was so busy trying to be someone. I never appreciated the someone I had. I hope you're happy, Bishop. You deserve it." The message ended. He stood there for a long moment in the quiet of his workshop, the scent of cherry wood and oil in the air. He felt the last vestiges of the old hurt finally dissolve. He had forgiven her long ago, not for her sake, but for his own peace. He deleted the voicemail, not out of anger, but because it was a message from a past he no longer inhabited. His life was not one of performance, but of purpose. He had learned that true wealth isn't measured in shares or stock prices, but in the quiet satisfaction of a day's good work, the warmth of the sun on your face, and the knowledge that you are using your resources to build something that will last long after you are gone. It's the freedom to be exactly who you are, without apology. For all those who have ever been made to feel small, who have been told their quiet life is not enough, remember this. Your value is not determined by someone else's ambition. Build your life on a foundation of integrity. Find your purpose, and you will own a richness that no amount of money can buy and no betrayal can ever take away. What do you think is the true measure of a successful life? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it.